In this video, we're going to show you exactly how to factor when it comes to trinomials, meaning that both of these here have three terms. However, the first thing you're looking for when you have a trinomial is our first term, does it start with a 1, like this one, it's x squared, or you could say 1x squared. That one starts with a 1, or is it something else? All right, I'm going to do two examples of both of these. Two examples where it starts with a 1 and two examples where it doesn't. So if you need to go to the parts where it doesn't in the video a little bit later, if that's the type that your homework has, maybe go to that. Otherwise, we're going to start out with two of these that start with a 1. Let's try it. All right, so I have two problems behind me. Both of these start with a 1, right? You can think this is just x squared or 1x squared. Same thing over here. That's like 1n squared. And with these, if it starts with a 1, I like these ones the best because I think they're nice and easy. But we are going to start with a graphic organizer in the shape of an X. So there's going to be something that goes in each of these kind of quadrants there. And what I like to put in there is, if I think of this as A, B, and C, and in those terms, as long as it's written in the right order with my biggest exponent first, and then the constant or the one with just a number at the end, I can use the coefficients, the numbers in front here, to say that like A is going to be a 1. All right, we're not using the X's, just the numbers. B would be a negative 12. And what would C be? Just 32, right? This only has a number. So like that. Now, in this graphic organizer, on the top, we're going to put A times our C. In this case, what is 1 times 32? Well, it's just going to be 32. And again, the ones are easy because 1 times anything is that number. The B, however, that's going to go on our bottom, B for bottom, and this gives us negative 12 down there. And I'm looking to find two numbers on the sides that multiply to be 32, and that add, those same two numbers are also going to add to be negative 12. So just kind of think for a second what multiplies to be 32. And if you need to write out factors of 32, you can, right? 1 times 32, 2 and 16, 3 doesn't work, 4 times 8, 5 doesn't work, 6 doesn't work, and I think that might be about it. So because of that, are any of these pairs going to add or subtract to be 12? And yeah, the 4 and 8 do. So if I were to put a 4 and an 8 in here, that's close, right? Those do multiply to be 32, but when I add, they give me positive 12. How can I get this to be a negative 12? Well, if they're both negative. If I say negative 4 and negative 8. So do those still multiply to be 32? Yes, and they now add to be negative 12. So what can I do with these two side numbers? Well, my factors, remember our whole goal is to factor this. My factors, if I split x squared, that's going to be x times x. And then these numbers just get plopped in next to those. I'm going to say minus 4 and minus 8. And if I were to multiply that back together, I would end up with x squared minus 12x plus 32. So this thing is factored now. Let's try a little bit faster now with the number 2. And again, I'm going to use my graphic organizer. 1 times negative 20 on top. 1 on the bottom, using just the numbers in front. If they don't have any, it's a 1. What two numbers multiply to be negative 20 and add to be 1? With ones, it can be a little tricky, but one thing that you know is that this has to be just 1 apart from each other, those two numbers. So what two numbers that are 1 apart from each other multiply to be 20? 4 and 5. If I put a 4 and a 5 here, now I need this to be a positive 1, and a negative 20 when I multiply. So I think the only way that that would happen is if I have negative 4, because 5 minus 4 is 1. If I add those together, or you could think negative 4 plus 5. And also negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. So those two numbers here are going to go on the sides, or those two numbers on the sides are going to go in my factors as negative 4. And then if it's a positive, you can just say plus 5 like that. And that is the answer when you're factoring when there's a 1 as your leading coefficient. Let's try it now when there's something besides a 1 as your leading coefficient. All right, so the second part of this video is when they do not start with a 1. This one starts with a 12, and this one is that one from the beginning that started with a 2. All right, we're going to actually kind of begin the same way, though, where I'm thinking this is my A, my B, and my C. And if we use just the numbers, if you watched that first part, you know this would be 2, this one would be 7, and that's going to be a negative 15 for the A, B, C. And again, if I use that graphic organizer, so starting out the exact same way, 2 times negative 15 here, that's going to be a negative 30. So that's my A times my C. The B term, this is just going to be a 7. So this one is a little trickier. We have to find, again, factors of 30 that add to be 7. So multiply to be 30, or negative 30 and add to be 7. So if you need to write these out, you can. We have 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 4 doesn't work, 5 and 6. Are any of these going to add or subtract to be 7? Any of those pairs? And I think 3 and 10 do. So if I put a 3 and a 10 here, to get a negative 30, when I multiply, one of those is going to have to be negative. And when I get 7, I think my 3 is going to have to be negative, right? If I add negative 3 plus 10 is 7, negative 3 times 10 is negative 30. So what do I do with this now? Well, I can't just plop those in this time because I don't have a 1 there. I can't just split that. If you remember in our first part, we split the x squared as x and x. Here I can't split my 2. It doesn't split very nicely. If you say 1 and 1, again, it doesn't multiply to be 2. And so because of that, I have to actually split the b term. So I'm going to use these two numbers. If I say 7x, that's the same as negative 3x and positive 10x. It's just written a little bit differently. All right, the other ones are going to come straight down. Get myself a little room here. We have 2x squared. That's my a term. And then my c term also comes straight down. And what we do with this is called factor by grouping. So if you don't quite know what that is, I do have some other videos that you can watch. But we're going to group together the first two terms and the last two terms. And by the way, this 3 and negative 10, or negative 3 and positive 10, it doesn't matter which way those go. It can be either one and you'll get the same answer. What can I take out? What's my GCF, or greatest common factor of this part? I think the only thing I can take out is an x. And when I do that, I'm left with 2x minus 3. Now, if you do this correctly, the second part, if you take something out, you'll also be left with 2x minus 3. So what could I take out of this group to be left with a 2x minus 3? Well, it's going to be a 5, and it's going to be a positive 5. If I take that out, 10 divided by 5 is 2x, and negative 15 divided by 5 is, negative 3. So because those two are the same, I know that I did it right. How do I write the answer? I'm going to take the parts that are not in the parentheses, say x plus 5. And I'm also going to take the parts that are in the parentheses, but I'm only going to write them once. I'm going to say 2x minus 3. So this is now my answer. And if I were to multiply that back together, I would in fact get 2x squared plus 7x minus 15. Okay, let's go a little bit faster now for this last one. This is 12x to the second minus 11x plus 2. So if I put together that graphic organizer, I have 12 times 2, that's 24, and negative 11, the b term on the bottom. Two numbers that multiply to be 24 and add to be 11. See if you can maybe do it in your head. What do you think? I think the 8 and 3 are going to work here. And since this is negative 11 and that's positive, I think these both have to be negative. And so if I were to split that b term, I would say this instead of negative 11x, this is now negative 8x minus 3x. I'm going to bring the a term in front, the c term at the end, and then I'm going to factor this by grouping. In that first group, I can take out a number this time. I can take out a 4 as well as an x. They both have x's. Take out a 4x, leaving me with 3x minus 2. Now over here, I have negative 3x plus 2. My signs are switched. So whenever you have something like that, you can take out a negative number. And in fact, this one, since I don't want the numbers to change, I'm going to divide by a negative 1. And negative 3 divided by negative 1 is a positive 3, which is good. And same thing over here. 2 divided by negative 1 is a negative 2. So those match up, so I know I did it right. To write my answer, I'm going to say 4x minus 1, the parts on the outside, times 3x minus 2. Just like that. So if I were to multiply those back together, I would get the original part there in red. Hopefully this helped you out, and until next time, keep doing your math homework fast and accurately.